You are listening to Your Money Story. I am Dawn Thomas, a mother of three, financial advisor by day, and a PhD candidate researching superannuation engagement. Your Money Story is about celebrating your journey, including you in the money conversation, empowering you to take control of your finances, and equalizing your position wherever you are. Let's change how the story ends. The information discussed in this podcast does not take into account your personal, financial, objectives, and situation. Before acting on any information discussed here, you should consider its appropriateness, having regard to your objectives, needs, and financial situation. This episode, we discuss the journey of formidable Gen Y woman, Chloe Liao. I have so much of admiration for Chloe's courage to live each day according to her values and support her community fearlessly. Chloe is the founder of the ACT Collective, which is a women's community group in Perth, which seeks to provide a safe space for women to serve and empower each other. She is also a compliance manager within the financial planning industry. Chloe discovered early on that as a Gen Y woman, she needed to equalize the power disparity within the workplace, between employer and employee. She did this by astute budgeting strategies, which still allows her every day to stick to living her truth. Thank you very much for being one of my first guests ever to come on the show. So could you just explain a bit of your story and what your attitude to money is?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me here on your podcast. And I'm very, very honored to be one of your first few guests. Too many nice words you say about me, but thank you so much. I think I do recognize that I'm in a privileged situation, not because I come from a wealthy background or anything, but because of my early experiences and watching my family's relationship with money. And I think because I wouldn't say I come from a well-off family, and I saw my parents' relationship with money, and it wasn't a happy one. It was always arguments around it, or there's always stress and anxiety around the topic of money. I think by looking at that, you can only go two ways. One, accept that that's the relationship with money, and that's how I can continue to treat money that way, or actually go the other way and say, I actually want to have a better relationship with money. And I think I chose that route intentionally and subconsciously through watching interactions and maybe feeling the stress as a child and not knowing how I could help. I think I told myself as I grown older that I don't want to be in that situation or ever want to have to fight with money. And then I think I would say, my journey with money only started in my early 20s. Prior to that, I spent my money however I want to spend it. And I never thought about saving and living in, not that living in debt. I didn't have debt, but it's more like living paycheck to paycheck was the norm for me for the longest time. I would say I only started being more intentional about it and reading and learning about it in my mid 20s, early 20s, like maybe 23, 24, 25. That was when I started like reading about it and wanting to have that good relationship with money and not just spending my money paycheck to paycheck. So that's when I would say I started saving.
Yeah, but I think I think that's early, so I can relate probably in two ways. As a financial advisor who's spoken to younger people, but also myself, if I think about my mid-20s, I think I was just randomly implementing things in life without any direction. Again, that's why I think the lessons that you have are really quite important to share. Now, you're part of the financial planning industry. Can you just tell our listeners a bit about your role?
At this stage, I sit between compliance. That's my role that I'm doing. And also a little bit of paraplanning and writing strategies, helping the advisors write strategies. I would say it's a skill that I'm still developing, the paraplanning side. But I do really love the legal side of financial planning and the compliance side of financial planning. I was an advisor earlier in my career, And I realized that, through the journey of being advised, it's interesting because I didn't quite feel fulfilled to an extent, partly because I was quite heavily involved in community work at that time as well. And I do feel like my hands were tied behind my back a little bit. That was my experience.
Okay.
And I want to be able to talk about my financial journey freely,
Okay.
without having the legal side over my head thinking that they could perceive this as advice. I know everyone has to put a disclosure at the start of a presentation, but I just want to be able to say, this is what I do personally. And I don't want people to see it as advice. And I think I just felt that I just felt that everything had to be vetted before it had to go, and I'm not sure whether you had that experience before, but for me, that was one aspect of it. And I think I just came to a point where I'm like, I don't want to be an advisor. I love the client interaction and I love talking to my clients. But I do like what I'm doing now. I feel like I'm in that sweet spot where I'm doing compliance using my legal brain, which is my background, and then being able to learn strategy, that side of the technical side of things, but also being able to share that information freely without people seeing me as an advisor.
It could be interesting to our listeners who are in financial planning or in that stage where they're working out which role they sit in financial planning. Yeah. So I think what you do in financial planning is every much as important as a financial advisor, because those of us who are financial advisors know that we don't act alone. We have a whole team supporting us. And I think how you've described your role where you are is that it's a very collaborative relationship with the end goal to help your clients out.
Definitely.
And the broader part of this story of also why you're significant here, besides your very smart ways with money management, is you've managed money wisely to be able to pursue what is important to you.
Yeah.
And could you please tell us more about that, Chloe? So it's you've got your main focus. The role in financial planning is almost like a support role to that bigger purpose.
I am very, very passionate about community work, and that's part of my values, and giving back to the community is something that I love. I genuinely love doing that. And I think financial planning, as you said, for me, it's like a way for me to make an income to then be able to support the things that I love to do, and so I have I have a women's group that I started, and it's called the Edge Collective. And basically it supports vulnerable people, most of them women, some of them from migrant and refugee background. And, there are things that we try to support them through, which is like separation, divorce, community connection, helping each other through. It could be a simple thing like if someone needs help to get from point A to point B, we just make that happen, And if someone's struggling from a toxic relationship, we want to be able to provide that support to them. So that's the whole intention of the group. And I think because I moved from Singapore on my own at such a young age, I felt like I never had that community. I did feel a little bit isolated. And I realized that when I'm involved in community, I'm unintentionally creating my own community. And I think it's so nice to see different people from different backgrounds sharing their different life experiences. And I think that's what Edge Collective is all about. It's about sharing information, supporting one another so that nobody can ever feel like they're alone in any situation. And that's what I really hope that we give and provide to the community.
And I've seen that as well in your posts. Like it's not just one area that you're helping with or one person. I think it's like you said, if somebody's, if there's a woman in need, You're going to find a way. I mean, you took a collection for Dress for Success in Perth. The next thing I saw was that when lockdown happened, you guys put a message out there saying that you had masks available. There could be a number of women listening to this podcast that very much align with those values, where you're going, you were kind of destined for this higher purpose, right? Like, because that's the way I view you, Chloe. I see the amount of courage you have to pursue what you have. From a financial planning point of view, I kind of see that you couldn't do that without good money management. I think that's what you've sort of explained to me, that when you've arranged your money in a way that is structured and strong, it gives you options. There's a particular fund that I never heard of till I spoke to you, but it's so smart because, again, it's one of those things I look back on hearing your journey and going, oh, I wish I had that set up. The way you pursued it was very smart.
Oh, thank you for that. So yeah, I shall not swear on this podcast, but I do have a fund, apart from, funds that I put aside for community work. I do have a fund called FU Money, and it's literally that. Like, I think that for me, as someone who does not have my immediate family here, that or any, I feel like if anything happened to me in a serious manner, I guess you can call it like an emergency fund or anything like that. But for me, I saved that money for the purpose of protecting myself in any way, shape, or form. Like if something were to happen to me, I'll be able to stand on my own 2 feet. But it has also provided me options such as quitting a toxic workplace.
Yes.
Without having to apologize and not stress about money. Being able to pay my mortgage. When I started saving at that point was up to 6 months, and that's including of my share and my partner's share of the mortgage. So if I was out of work and he's still working, he can pay his share, and probably that could last for a year of me paying back my mortgage. And that fund is, I consistently contribute to it now. At all times. Every time I get paid weekly. My money goes in there, and I don't actually touch it unless I need it for an emergency. But I think I've used it in very hard situations in my career. I think most of the times I feel like, as an employee of someone, this is my strong belief, that I am the own director of my own life, as much as I am an employee for someone. I feel that having that money allows me to say, because, in a workplace, there's a power imbalance. And I feel like for me to have that to fall back on, it's like me protecting myself against power imbalance and potential bullying in the workplace, which I have been through. And I feel strong when I quit a toxic job, and I'm like, I
don't need you.
You're not for me, and I've said that before, like, I don't need this job. And it feels great to say it because nobody owns me,
Yeah. So if you're breaking up with your job, you can kind of say, it's not me, it's you. That's basically what you can say.
I think I've said a few brutal things, but not with the intention to hurt. It's more with the intention of getting my point across, in that I think traditionally we always may view that, whatever our boss says is go. But if I watch, a senior staff member or my boss, and if they are not practicing what they preach and they are doing something that is not right at all, I think as an employee, I have a right to point that out, but a lot of people don't, because for fear of losing their job, for fear of judgment. But I think I reach a point that I don't care. And I don't care for approval of my bosses, and I don't care for approval of the people in the industry if they may feel that I am too outspoken on certain topics. I think it's important that we feel comfortable to speak out on things that matters to us. And I always tell myself, as long as I go to bed being able to sleep at night, knowing that I've lived my values every day, or wake up and live my values, that's all that matters. I would like to think that money is one aspect of being able to feel powerful and confident in saying what you want. But I think the thing that is most important on top of that is my community and having that support from my community, whether it's within the financial planning industry or outside the financial planning industry. I'm lucky to have both, because at the end of the day, people can take money away from you. Like, say, for example, if you aren't happy and what you say can get you in trouble, you know, but it can take my community or my family away from me. And that's more powerful than anything. Like, you know, I am very lucky and thankful for the things that I have, a roof over my head, and it's steady income that's coming in. But if that was all taken away, I know I'll still be happy and will be able to find happiness through my community and the support that I have from the people around me.
So there's like three things that have jumped out for that. And I think this is something actually we didn't quite cover because we haven't actually put a label to it when we talk more freely, right? And we're talking in this podcast. So it's a chance to also kind of closely examine what you're saying here. But you talked about equalizing power. And you're right, you know, that sense of ownership, which is the second thing. When you're an employee, there's a sense of ownership over you. You are basically selling part of your time in a day to someone else. So therefore, they're owning you for that part of the day. And when you talk about equalizing power, especially in the financial services industry, women are generally put in a situation where there is a power disparity, and we find different ways of trying to equate that. Those 2 points are really powerful, but at the third point is that you're not saying that money is your focus in life, but money is that the enabler to give you freedom to pursue whatever you want in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's not saying that you don't need money. You know, it's not that kind of, you know, that Jessie J song where it's not all about the money. You need to structure your money. It's not about being rich. It's putting in place what you talked about, because in finance books and different kind of suggestions, people kind of talk about emergency funds. What I thought about your situation with the FU fund is so much more than an emergency. This is talking about your life. You know, this is talking about your life and your choices and mental health, because toxic workplaces, you know, they can take a lot out of you as well. So if any of our listeners are in that position where you are able to start constructing your money and placing it into different pots, that emergency fund should be able to also give you the freedom to move. So if you're planning to be an employee for a while, I think that's quite an important point. Or if you find yourself in Chloe's position where she is pursuing community work because that's where she sees her purpose at, just make sure that the budget supports that, or it's almost like a lead up. You came across this, correct me if I'm wrong, because you started actively looking for a mentorship relationship and it was part of the mentoring that you received. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I would say that, you know, I was putting money away. I was saving money and putting it away. I never stopped to ask myself why, you know, and I felt like when I connected and understood my values and putting and viewing money in that way was motivated me even more to literally just dump even more money away to my FU money. So let me give you an example. I was saving a bunch of money, but I never know why. I just like, oh yeah, you know, this initially it was going to start for in the event that if my parents get sick, I will be able to fly back to Singapore and, you know, pay the mortgage if anything happens. But I never thought of it in such a detail that aligned with my values until when I first actually, I met your colleague, Joseph. He was actually my first mentor in the industry. And I thank him for teaching me and telling me to be clear on my values. And he was the one that put it in my head. It says, that actually said that if you're clear on your values and you go into your workplace, and if your employer doesn't have the same values as you, it's never going to work out, regardless of how long you stay, right? And I was like, that is so true, because I was living it. Like, you know, so I actually went back and I sat down and I wrote what my values are, what's important to me. And then I went back to ask my boss, like, where do you see this business going? Like, what's important to you? And at that time, I was an advisor, and I realized that where they were headed is not something that I see myself in, you know? And at the time, I had the ability to make good money, you know, as an advisor, right? The opportunities were there. And I actually quit my job to take a step back in my career, although my current boss, Julia, she would never allow me to say that I've taken a step back in my career at that point in time.
Yes.
Because she said that as long as I'm learning and growing, I'm taking a step forward, right? And having that and making that change of mind, thinking that being an advisor was one thing that I wanted to achieve, and because it was the next step for me, and I've achieved that. I got there and I'm like, is there all to it? I feel quite miserable, you know? And I was laughed at, Dawn. Like, when I left, I remember my boss at that time saying to me, why would you do it? You have the ability to make decent income. So you'll be making more than your partner. Why would you do that? And one of the nastiest things that actually happened to me, and I will never forget, was when I started at my new job and I took a step back. He took the rest of the office to Bali, and they actually butt dialed me to show me that they were all at the beach chilling out, laughing that, haha, Chloe must still be in the office. I thought that wasn't very nice, you know, and I'm a professional in the first place, but that kind of behavior really motivated me to be like, nah, I will never ever let people like this make me ever feel that way. And I think that clicked. I was like, not my employer.
Yes.
Not my employer. No one in this industry should ever make me feel tiny or small. And I will only surround myself with good people. And that's why I found, when Joseph said, you know, find people with the right values to be able to support you, our path cross, you know. I met you through Grace. You know, Grace and I wouldn't have been connected if I didn't read a newspaper article on her work that she was doing. And I sent her an email and I'm like, hey, let's catch up for coffee. And I know it's uncomfortable because I felt uncomfortable at that time. I even felt uncomfortable reaching out to Joseph. I didn't even know him, you know, and the fact that he took time out of his day to have coffee with me and teach me these things, I applied those things to my life. When I met you and you taught me about, you know, when I was deciding if I should stay in this industry or not, because I was feeling quite down and disappointed, you know, post Royal Commission, how things are, you know, certain things that I wasn't happy about. And, you know, and you actually said to me, you can't give up.
The industry needs people like you. And I guess what's heartbreaking for me as a female financial advisor is that when women are within financial planning, or I suppose any industry, and they're in a toxic environment, they kind of go, the whole industry is not for them and they might exit, you know. And what happens is that the industry suffers for that. And I think my conversation was more so not of you should become a financial advisor. I was so scared that no, you're going to leave, because I saw your passion. I saw what you wanted to do for communities as well. I saw how smart you are with going and how passionate you are. Why would we want to lose you as a community, you know? So you know, I think that's something that we both have in common, is that we do reach out to people who can energize us. And also I think what we both felt about each other is that we knew we were not both crazy people for feeling the way we feel about value systems. Part of it, that kind of leads in to the question about the Gen Y women specifically. Why is it important for the Gen Y woman to get mentored?
Watching the people that have walked the path before you, it doesn't matter whether they are older than you or younger than you, you can learn so much from that, from their journey. And I think watching it from afar inspires me subconsciously, that, or gives me hope if I'm feeling down. While some things in life may disappoint me, there are good people around doing great things, right? And for example, when I have been in toxic workplaces, and multiple of them in the industry, I can automatically assume that this place, the industry, I can just paint it like a, you know, like a paintbrush and say it's all the same. Every practice out there is like that, and that's finance,
Yeah.
Why should I have to accept that, you know?
Yeah.
But I am so lucky in that I am currently now working in a place where they act and they speak their values, and their values are closely aligned to my values. So I feel that for people who feel that there is no hope at that point when I was feeling,
Yeah.
you know, or if you're feeling that you may want to make a career change, I always think it's smart to speak to people who are actually practicing the role, what they think about it. And I think that they can give you valuable insight, and you may not feel like you're alone in your journey. And I think that's what I felt when I met you, when I was going through a really hard time. And when Grace was like, oh, you should, I think she sent an email saying, meet Dawn, she's in financial planning, same values as you, have coffee with her. I didn't feel alone. And I was feeling alone at that point in time. And I'm glad that I was able to talk with you, and you encouraged me in some way to not give up. And I'm glad that since then until now, we maintain that communication and open communication. You allow for me to, you know, lean in and ask you questions if I'm feeling a certain way.
Look, because you're giving us tips as we go along, right? By sharing your journey.
Yeah.
One of the things is the FU fund. You're talking about budgeting. Make sure you've got something for the freedom that's there. You talked about mentoring, you know, being able to get someone else to help guide you on that journey, to just make that journey clearer.
Yeah.
You're also talking about circle of support. You know, you're saying that you've got to be able to build your community. So you're doing things for the community, yes, but you need to build a community around you so that you can be supported to have the journey that you're in, because it's not always an easy part to tread, but it's easier when you've got support system.
100%.
Yeah. So you've really given us like 3 really valuable magical tips. Part of it, I think, like I really hear your passion and your drive. You're talking about values. You know, I spoke to Azaria before, and she was talking about the Gen Z woman. And she said they're very value-driven and very purpose-driven. And she said the misconception is that generation maybe is not serious about work because they're trying to connect what they do to a higher purpose.
Yeah.
So if you could define the Gen Y woman, being in that generation, who is the Gen Y woman to you?
To me, okay, I can't speak for everyone in Gen Y because everyone has different relationships or different views or different values. But to me, as a Gen Y woman, I feel similar to what Azaria has said in terms of living your values, and it's meaningful. That is definitely a big part of my life, living true to my values and having, you know, the support system and, you know, being able to make an income through that. But I think the Gen Y woman, I think we also are similar to Gen X in the sense that we want to be able to work in a workplace that talks their values, but also walks the walk. You know, I think we're always looking for a job that inspires us or, you know, but I also think that we are motivated in making changes to things that we may see as whatever old school is defined, you know, like yourself, I think you have your own view of what the kind of financial planning you want to provide. You're very clear on that, you know, and I think that's great because it's different, but it's great, you know, and I love it. And that's why I think, as you said, like you hope that I don't give up in this industry and, you know, continue to be there. The same way as when I look at you and you're in the industry, I'm like thankful for that. From an outsider's perspective, if I left the industry, I'm like, thank God for advisors like you. Thank God for advisors with good values. Thank God for advisors. Thank God for businesses like the practice I work in, you know?
You know, that's one of the things that I think if you're talking about support systems, and now you've mentioned a 4th thing, Chloe, like you just call this pearls of wisdom dropping. That when you build your support system, you're actually changing the reality of what you see, right? Because if you're stuck in a toxic environment and you think this is reflective of how a whole industry is, you really start believing it. But for me personally, I use LinkedIn. And I like connecting up to people who are doing exciting things. And I think we've got similar value systems or in the industry, because my virtual world becomes like my reality. I know that sounds weird, that the virtual world becomes that, but I needed to construct the world that I wanted, So personally, I connected to a lot of women in financial planning. In my virtual world, the breakup between female and male advisors is not 20% women and 80% men. I think in my world, it might be like something like 70% women, 30% men, because I can construct that. I don't have control over maybe the people you do interact with, but I've got control with how I react. But what I admire from your point of view is that you've allowed yourself to be unburdened by things like being stuck in a place because of financial reasons. You've used money in a very, very smart way to pursue community. And people might think that these two things are separate. If you're community minded, surely you're not money minded. But what you're saying is that if you've got money, your money journey set up, you can pursue community.
100%.
If you've got mentorship, you're going to be able to stay the course to where you want to be. If you've got a circle of support, you're not going to get burnt out by trying to pursue a challenging path, because face it, we are all facing a challenging path, for whatever reason that might be. And when you construct your world, what you're saying as well now is that, you surround yourself really as much as possible with people within your community who give you that hope that there is a better tomorrow. So that is fantastic, Chloe. You do a lot of reading. You look at a lot of resources. So for our listeners, I would just like them to be able to take away something that they can action easily. So what are 3 things you think from a financial point of view that they could action easily, but makes a difference for them moving forward?
1, I think learn about your values. Really sit down and identify what is meaningful to you. And it could be different things, and it doesn't have to be what my values are. It can be whatever you want to be, as long as you're happy with it. Number 2, I would say set up that FU money or to be able to live your values and be unapologetically you.
Correct. Love it. Yep.
And number 3, whilst we may have ties and attachment to certain things in the world, such as our job titles or our attachment to saying that this is my title, this is who I am in the industry, this is what I am. Just know that there's a bigger world out there. And your impact goes way beyond just being called or titled a financial planner. And you are worth more than that. The last thing I want someone to feel is that if they feel that they are a lawyer and this is how they should be and this is their world and everything, you can love your job, you can love what you do, but don't be so tied to their identity, because when you feel that, how do I describe this? I don't know how to describe this in a way that I initially was I'll just give you an example. I was very tired. I thought that financial planning is for me. I was in the role and I was like in this industry and I was actually quite active in it, and I think I had to go through a few challenges in the industry to realize that all these things don't matter to me. And I don't care if this industry may think a certain way of me or because I was attached to me working in this industry, I think learning to detach from that and not really caring. I really don't give a shit what people think. I think it's very freeing and very liberating.
It's relevant. I think this comes up a lot because people are trying to find their way in whichever industry that they're in, whether it's financial planning or not. I think what you're trying to say is understand the motivation behind why you're pursuing something. If you're just doing it for a job title, that's probably that's probably not going to be sustainable. That's why you said point 1, know your values. So I'll lead you back to your point 1 statement, which was know your values. And when you understand that driver, know your values, but also have a good budgeting system, I would say, as well. That's a combination. 100%. That helps you make decisions for the future. And if you do kind of get it wrong, where you've ended up in a place where it doesn't suit you, which happens, you can make decisions to correct that course. It doesn't mean you're going backwards. You're just changing the course of where you need to be. So, no, I think those are very, very important tips. your representation of the Gen Y woman is something so beautiful and powerful. And you just got to continue to spread the joy and magic that you do, Chloe. The corporate theme of International Women's Day is choose to challenge. I'm not going to ask you what you choose to challenge this year, because you challenge a lot of things. You're a bit of a warrior woman. What do you want to challenge our listeners to choose to challenge this year? What's your challenge to them?
I think to pursue anything that makes you feel uncomfortable.
Oh, get out of your comfort zone. Okay.
Anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. I really want to do improv because it's so uncomfortable. And I think, like, treat it like a game.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. And if I fail, I fail.
Yeah.
But I think it teaches you like valuable skills along the way. So I don't know, I'm challenging myself this year to do things that I feel really uncomfortable about, doing this, and being recorded on a podcast. It's uncomfortable. I said yes, even though I was questioning myself. Do I really represent the Gen Y woman? Because I recognize that I'm in a privileged situation to be where I am at today, but there are also a lot of vulnerable women out there that may not be able to have that luxury for putting money aside. And I do recognize that, but I also want to help them as much as I can.
Yes. And you're doing that, Chloe. I think so. That's what you're really doing with the X Collective as well. I really like that challenge, because you're talking about the importance of being outside of your comfort zone. So for our listeners out there, think of what could be a new area of boundary for you, whether that's speaking up in a meeting that you've been quiet about all this time. Chloe's talking about improv, but I'll think about more about the workplace. If maybe try praising yourself at a meeting. Maybe just share a story about something awesome that you've done for someone. That's okay. People need to know. So practice being a bit uncomfortable and grow. Yeah. You can find Chloe on different mediums through LinkedIn and Instagram. If you want to reach out and find out more about her story, I think she will be a brilliant mentor to anyone. The Gen
so
Y
nice to me.
No, Gen Y and Gen Z journey, and we'll put some of those details on the show notes. Thank you everyone for listening, and thank you, Chloe, on a Saturday for giving me your time.
No, my pleasure. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you for joining our Circle of Stories. Subscribe for new episodes. Let's change how the story ends.